All right, for this lesson, we're moving into History Standard 12. The student will explain the importance of significant social, economic, and political developments in Georgia since 1970. And we're focusing on element A, and our central question is, what was the effect of the end of the county unit system on Georgia? Before we get started, there are two terms that you're going to want to know, and they are apportion and reapportion. Both are verbs. To apportion means to divide or allocate, and to reapportion means to assign or distribute something again or in a different way. And that's going to become important for you to know as we move into the changes in how it affected Georgia. So first, let's take a look at the county unit system and what it was. In 1917, the state of Georgia enacted the county unit system, which gave each county a certain number of votes during the primary based on a classification of type. And those classifications were rural, town, and urban. This system effectively strengthened the power and the influence of rural counties while minimizing that of those counties that held urban centers. So it gave rural areas more political power than urban areas, which are the cities. Since many of these counties were the homes to more black and progressive white voters and were allowed fewer votes, officials with discriminatory and white supremacy practices tend to get elected and retain power. So in other words, if you look at the map over here, this kind of gives the layout of what the county unit system looked like. If you were a red county, you got 6 votes. And if you were a yellow county, you got 4. And if you were blue, you got 2. And as you can see, the blue areas are the rural areas, and that would have carried more weight throughout the state of Georgia. So we have some court cases that began to come up, and Baker versus Carr is one of the first ones. In the 1940s and 50s, there were several Georgians and other Southerners that tried to bring cases to the Supreme Court in hopes of ending the county unit system. However, it wasn't until 1962 in the Tennessee court case, Baker versus Carr, that brought an end to the county unit system. In this case, the Supreme Court ruled that the county unit system violated the principle of one man, one vote, and that it was unconstitutional. At the same time that this was happening in Tennessee, another lawsuit concerning the county unit system was being held in Atlanta. In this case, a Fulton County voter, James Sanders, sued the state's Democratic Party with the complaint that his vote had less weight in Fulton County than it would have had in another county, a rural county. The court agreed with Sanders' argument and ended the county unit system in Georgia. So this was around 1962 that this happened. Well, in 1964, there's another court case brought to the Supreme Court that further eroded this imbalance of power held by rural voters. In a case that's considered a reapportionment case, it's Westberry versus Sanders. A group of Fulton County voters sued the state based on how their congressional districts were drawn. Before this ruling, Georgia divided their voting districts by geography and not by population. This once again allowed a collection of rural counties to have more influence and power than urban areas. The Supreme Court ruled that congressional districts must be divided by population, with each district having roughly an equal number of voters. All right, so how did this affect Georgia? Both the end of the county unit system and reapportionment had a lasting effect on Georgia. For one, elections were more fair as the ideal of one man, one vote came into full effect. One of the other effects that it had is that African Americans and whites who lived in urban areas or in the cities had an equal say based on the large amount of people that lived in these areas. And in turn, what ended up happening is that more African Americans began to get elected into public office when the counties were reapportioned. And finally, more positions were created for urban areas. So for more information, you're going to go to the New Georgia Encyclopedia at georgiaencyclopedia.com. When you search up in the search bar, there are 3 articles: the county unit system, Gray versus Sanders, and Westberry versus Sanders will help you gain more information. There is a task that's been posted under Lesson 8 for Standard H12 on Google Classroom, and you will complete that information and submit that task when you're finished.